Annalise sits stunned in her boss Trevor's office, as he explains she's not quite ready for the senior analyst position despite 3 years of late nights, weekend work, and solving crises no one else could handle. Watching her male colleague Jack celebrate his promotion through the glass walls, Annalise realizes she's been carrying her department while others advance. A calm clarity washes over her as she decides. No more extra hours, no more emergency fixes, no more thankless sacrifice. Monday morning, she'll work exactly what she's paid for, nothing more. I still remember the day I joined Meridian Financial with such hope and enthusiasm. 3 years ago, fresh out of my MBA program where I'd graduated with honors, I was thrilled to land a position as a financial systems analyst at one of the most prestigious firms in Boston. The glass and steel building downtown felt like the perfect place to build my career, and I was determined to climb the corporate ladder through hard work and dedication. From day one, I put everything into my job. When our trading platform crashed during my second week, I stayed until 3 a.m. working with the IT team to restore functionality before markets opened. Trevor, my department manager, had patted me on the back the next day and said, "That's the kind of initiative we like to see around here, Annalise." Those words of approval became what I chased for the next 3 years. The faces at Meridian became familiar quickly. There was Trevor Hammond, my boss, a 40-something man with salt and pepper hair, who'd been with the company for 15 years. He had a booming laugh reserved exclusively for the executive floor, and a habit of saying things like, "We're all family here," right before assigning weekend work. Jack Pearson started 6 months after me with considerably less experience but an uncanny ability to get invited to Trevor's golf outings. Megan Sullivan, my closest ally in the department, was brilliantly talented, but had been passed over twice for advancement, despite her innovative solutions that saved clients millions. And then there was Diane Winters from HR, one of the few women in leadership, who always seemed to notice when I was working late. "Don't burn yourself out," she'd warn me with knowing eyes that suggested she'd seen my story play out before. "You're our go-to problem solver," Trevor would say whenever a client was unhappy or a system needed upgrading outside normal hours. I took pride in that designation, believing it meant I was being groomed for advancement. When the quarterly system updates needed testing, I volunteered. When new hires needed training, I created comprehensive materials on my own time. When our biggest client threatened to leave after a reporting error, I was the one who spent my entire weekend rebuilding their custom dashboard to keep them. The office culture at Meridian glorified visibility. It wasn't enough to do good work, you had to be seen doing it. Those who sent emails at midnight or came in on Sundays received public praise in staff meetings. Our predominantly male leadership team often reminisced about their dues-paying years when explaining why work-life balance initiatives weren't necessary. Meanwhile, my personal life remained on hold. My younger sister Amy was in her junior year of college, and I was helping with her tuition. Our parents had always emphasized education but hadn't been able to save much before Dad's medical bills depleted their retirement fund. The mortgage on my small condo stretched my budget thin each month, making the senior analyst position's $20,000 salary increase not just desirable but necessary. So when Trevor called me into his office last Friday afternoon, I walked in expecting good news. The senior analyst position had been open for a month, and everyone knew Jack and I were the top candidates. But my confidence was fragile, built on a foundation of overwork and constant approval seeking. "You've done solid work here, Annalise," Trevor began, leaning back in his chair. "But we feel you're not quite ready for the senior role." Jack demonstrates the leadership qualities we're looking for at that level. I nodded mechanically as Trevor continued his practice speech about development areas and future opportunities. While through the glass partition, I could see Jack receiving congratulatory handshakes. My mind flashed to all the times I'd solved problems Jack created, trained him on systems he now claimed expertise in, and covered for his absences during client emergencies. After thanking Trevor for his feedback, a response programmed by years of being a good corporate soldier, I returned to my desk in a haze. As I was gathering my things to leave, an email notification appeared on my screen. Trevor had apparently meant to forward my evaluation to HR, but had accidentally included me in the recipients. The words jumped from the screen. Jack shows exceptional leadership potential and executive presence. He'll represent the department well with clients and senior leadership. And then about me. Annalise is technically proficient, but too detail-oriented. She lacks the executive presence needed at senior level. Recommend keeping her in current role, where her attention to detail is valuable. My performance metrics had consistently outranked Jack's. My client satisfaction scores were perfect. I had implemented 3 system improvements that saved the company hundreds of thousands of dollars. But none of that mattered because I lacked executive presence, a nebulous quality that somehow Jack possessed, despite his mediocre results. I shut down my computer, a strange calm replacing my initial shock. For 3 years, I had given Meridian Financial everything: my nights, weekends, vacations, and health. And in return, I'd been deemed lacking because I focused on actual results rather than perception. That night, I made my decision: no more. The weekend gave me time to reflect and research. Saturday morning, instead of checking work emails as usual, I searched for information on workplace equity and bias in corporate promotion practices. The patterns I found were disturbingly familiar: women frequently passed over despite superior performance, vague feedback about executive presence or cultural fit, and the expectation that women would handle extra work without recognition. By Sunday evening, my strategy was clear. I printed out my official job description from when I was hired and created a spreadsheet documenting all the additional responsibilities I'd taken on. The contrast was striking. I was doing the work of nearly 2 positions without the title or compensation of even one senior role. Monday morning, I arrived at the office at exactly 8 o'clock instead of my usual 7:15. I wore my standard professional attire but left the backup outfit I usually kept for unexpected client meetings at home. On my desk calendar, I blocked off noon to 1 for lunch every day, something I'd rarely taken in 3 years. "Morning, Annalise," Trevor said as he walked past my desk at 9:30. "I need you to look at the Davidson account before their call at 4. Something's off in their portfolio allocation reports." "Good morning, Trevor," I replied pleasantly. "I'll add it to my task list for today." By 11 o'clock, I had completed my assigned work for the morning and started on the Davidson account, which would normally be Jack's responsibility as the new senior analyst. At exactly noon, I saved my work, locked my computer, and stood up. Heading to lunch, I announced to no one in particular, though I noticed Megan's surprised expression. In 3 years, she'd rarely seen me leave my desk for meals. When I returned at 1 o'clock precisely, 3 voicemails awaited me. The Davidson issue was apparently more urgent than Trevor had indicated. I methodically worked through the problems, identifying the error in the allocation algorithm that Jack had implemented during his last system update. By 4:45, I had resolved the issue and sent a detailed report to Trevor and the account team just 15 minutes before my scheduled departure. At 5 o'clock, I shut down my computer, collected my belongings, and walked toward the exit. Trevor emerged from the conference room where the Davidson call was still underway. "Annalise, we need you to stay and implement these changes to the Davidson platform tonight. They're expecting the fix by morning." I smiled politely. "I've completed the diagnostic and solution documentation during my scheduled hours. The implementation is straightforward. The instructions are in my email. Jack should be able to handle it as the senior analyst." Trevor's face registered genuine surprise. "But you always handle the Davidson implementations. You built their custom platform." "Yes," I agreed calmly. "That was additional work I took on beyond my job description. Since my recent evaluation indicated I need to focus on my development areas, I'm being more mindful about aligning my work with my actual position. Have a good evening." I walked out of the office at 5:01, leaving Trevor staring after me. My phone buzzed with emails and messages throughout the evening, but for the first time in years, I didn't check them. Instead, I cooked a proper dinner, called my sister, and went to bed at a reasonable hour. Tuesday followed the same pattern. I arrived at 8, completed my assigned tasks efficiently, took my full lunch break, and left at 5. The office atmosphere had shifted. Subtly curious glances followed me as colleagues noticed my changed routine. By Wednesday morning, the impact of my boundaries was becoming clear. Jack was visibly stressed, having stayed until midnight trying to fix the Davidson implementation. He'd made several errors, and the client was threatening to escalate to senior management. During the morning staff meeting, Trevor announced, "We need all hands on deck to fix the Davidson situation. Annalise, I want you to lead the response team." "I'd be happy to work on that today between 8 and 5, I replied, my voice steady despite the tension in the room. "This is an all-hands situation," Trevor emphasized, his frustration evident. "We need this fixed immediately, which means working until it's done. According to my development needs as outlined in my recent evaluation," I said, loud enough for everyone to hear, "I need to focus on building executive presence rather than being too detail-oriented. I believe managing my time boundaries is part of that growth." The room fell silent. Trevor's face flushed as I referenced the very feedback he'd used to deny me the promotion. "See me in my office after this meeting," he snapped. In his office, Trevor dropped the diplomatic facade. "What game are you playing, Annalise? The Davidson account is worth millions to this company." "I'm not playing any game," I responded. "I'm working according to my job description and the feedback I received. You indicated I'm not ready for advancement, so I'm focusing on the skills you suggested I develop. That doesn't mean abandoning your responsibilities." "I haven't abandoned anything," I said, sliding forward a printed copy of my job description. "Everything listed here is being completed excellently and on time. The additional work I've been doing, like after-hours implementations, weekend system updates, and training new hires, isn't actually part of my current role. Since those extra efforts weren't considered valuable for advancement, I'm redirecting that energy toward my professional development." Trevor stared at me, momentarily speechless. When he finally spoke, his tone was different, less commanding, more cajoling. "Look, Annalise, every team member needs to pitch in beyond their job description sometimes. That's just corporate life." "I completely agree." I nodded. "And I've pitched in for 3 years without recognition. Now I'm learning to establish professional boundaries, which I understand is important for leadership roles." As I left Trevor's office, my phone dinged with an urgent message about the Davidson account. A presentation error Jack had made was threatening to cost us the client altogether. Trevor caught up with me at my desk. "You need to fix this now, Annalise. Drop everything else." I looked at the time, 4:30. "I'll start immediately and do what I can before 5. "This will take hours to fix," Trevor nearly shouted. "You need to stay and finish it." With perfect calm, I replied using his exact words from my evaluation. "I understand your urgency, but I need to focus on my development needs. Being less detail-oriented and more strategic about my time is part of building the executive presence you mentioned I'm lacking." Trevor's face showed a dawning realization that the very feedback he'd used to justify denying me advancement was now being used to deny him my unpaid labor. He walked away without another word. And at 5 o'clock, I left the building with the Davidson crisis still unresolved. Thursday morning arrived with a palpable tension in the office. When I walked in at 8 o'clock sharp, several colleagues glanced up nervously. The Davidson situation had apparently deteriorated overnight, with the client threatening to take their 8-figure portfolio to a competitor. On my desk was a printed list of tasks Trevor had left, marked urgent, must complete today. The list contained enough work for 3 analysts and would normally require at least 12 hours to complete properly. I recognized the tactic for what it was, an attempt to force me to either stay late or fail to meet expectations. I methodically prioritized the list based on true client impact rather than Trevor's arbitrary urgency markers and began working through the tasks with maximum efficiency. By eliminating the unnecessary documentation Trevor usually required and focusing solely on effective solutions, I made remarkable progress. Jack stopped by my desk around 10, his usual confidence replaced by visible anxiety. "Hey, Annalise, do you have a minute to help me understand the Davidson proprietary trading algorithm? They're asking questions I can't answer." Sure, I replied pleasantly. I have 15 minutes free now. Let me show you the basic structure. For the next quarter hour, I explained the system I had built, while Jack took frantic notes. When my timer indicated our agreed time was up, I returned to my prioritized tasks. But there's so much more to cover, Jack protested. You're right, I agreed. It's a complex system that took me months to develop and refine. As senior analyst, you'll want to schedule time to fully understand it. My documentation is quite thorough if you check the shared drive. As lunchtime approached, I noticed Megan watching me with a curious expression. When I stood up to take my break, she joined me at the elevator. What's going on with you this week? She asked once we were outside. Everyone's talking about it. I'm simply working my scheduled hours and focusing on my assigned responsibilities, I replied. Megan's eyes widened. This is about the promotion, isn't it? It's about valuing my time and skills appropriately, I said. The company has made it clear that all my extra work doesn't count toward advancement. So, I'm redirecting that energy. It's kind of brilliant, Megan admitted. The department is falling apart without your unpaid overtime. When we returned from lunch, an unfamiliar face was in the conference room with Trevor. Megan leaned over and whispered, "That's Benjamin Wright from headquarters. He's some kind of efficiency expert the CEO sends to evaluate departments. Nobody knows exactly what triggers his visits, but people usually get fired afterward." Throughout the afternoon, I continued working steadily through my task list, completing the genuinely important items with my usual thoroughness. At 4 o'clock, Trevor called an impromptu department meeting. "This is Benjamin Wright from corporate," Trevor announced, gesturing to the serious-looking man beside him. "He'll be observing our department for the next few weeks as part of a company-wide productivity assessment." Benjamin nodded at the group. "I'm here to identify operational strengths and inefficiencies. Please continue your normal workflows. I'll be scheduling individual meetings with each of you." As the meeting concluded, Trevor added, "And Annalise, I need you to prepare a comprehensive analysis of the Westlake merger implications by tomorrow morning. It's a priority for the executive team." The Westlake merger was a massive project that would typically require several days of intensive work. Trevor was clearly testing my boundaries again. "I'll start that right away," I said calmly. I should be able to complete the preliminary analysis before 5. Back at my desk, I immediately began working on the Westlake data, applying an analytical framework I'd been developing but had never had time to implement. Without the constant interruptions of crisis management I usually dealt with, I was able to focus completely. By 4:50, I had produced a concise, insightful analysis that identified key financial impacts Trevor had likely overlooked. I printed one copy, placed it on Trevor's desk, and sent the digital file to him and the relevant team members. At 5 o'clock, I left as scheduled. On Friday morning, I arrived to find Benjamin Wright waiting at my desk. "Miss Patterson," he said, extending his hand. "I was impressed by your Westlake analysis. Trevor presented it at this morning's executive briefing." "Thank you," I replied, noting that Trevor had apparently taken credit for my work. "I'd like to discuss your analytical approach if you have time today," Benjamin continued. "I'd be happy to meet during regular hours," I said. "My calendar is updated with my availability." Later that morning, during my meeting with Benjamin, he asked pointed questions about my role and contributions to the department. I answered honestly, providing specific examples of systems I'd developed and problems I'd solved, always referring to documentation rather than making claims without evidence. "You seem exceptionally efficient," Benjamin observed. "Yet I understand there have been some client issues this week. Those issues fall under senior analyst responsibilities," I explained. "Until last week, I often handled them informally, but as I wasn't considered ready for the senior role, I'm focusing on excellence within my actual position." Benjamin's expression revealed nothing, but he took detailed notes. After our meeting, I was reviewing quarterly performance data when I discovered something unusual. Buried in the department financial reports was evidence that Trevor had received substantial performance bonuses based largely on systems and client solutions I had developed. Most shocking was a $50,000 leadership excellence bonus awarded the same week he'd denied my promotion. The numbers told a clear story. Trevor had been taking credit for my work while simultaneously blocking my advancement. His leadership excellence was really his skill at extracting unpaid labor from employees like me, while reaping the financial rewards himself. As this realization settled over me, Trevor approached my desk. "Annalise, we need to talk about your attitude this week." Before he could continue, I responded calmly. "I'd be happy to discuss performance metrics. In fact, I've just been reviewing some interesting departmental finance data." The slight widening of Trevor's eyes told me he understood exactly what I'd found. He quickly changed the subject. "The executive team was impressed with your Westlake analysis. This is the kind of work that gets noticed." "I'm glad they found it valuable," I said, "though I noticed my name was removed from the report when you presented it." Trevor had the decency to look momentarily uncomfortable. Team efforts don't always allow for individual credit. "Interesting perspective," I replied, "especially since the bonus structure seems quite individual." Our conversation was interrupted by Benjamin, who asked Trevor for some departmental records. As they walked away, I noticed Megan watching the interaction with newfound understanding in her eyes. The rest of Friday progressed with mounting tension. Jack was struggling visibly with client demands he couldn't meet, while Trevor alternated between attempting to pressure me into taking on extra work and avoiding me altogether. By late afternoon, the impact of my boundaries had created ripple effects throughout the department, exposing inefficiencies and mismanagement that had previously been masked by my overwork. At 4:30, I received an email that made me pause. It was from Lauren Taylor, a former colleague who had left Meridian 6 months ago for a competitor firm. The subject line read, "Interested in a conversation?" I opened it to find a discreetly worded message suggesting her company was looking for someone with my exact skills, offering a senior position with a 40% salary increase. The timing seemed almost too perfect. As I considered this unexpected development, I realized day 5 of my new boundaries was nearly complete. Despite Trevor's attempts to break my resolve, I had maintained my professional standards while working exactly what I was paid for, nothing more, nothing less. At precisely 5 o'clock, I shut down my computer and prepared to leave. As I stood, an urgent email notification appeared on my phone. It was from Trevor to the entire department. "Critical client meeting scheduled for 6:30 tonight. Attendance mandatory for all team members." The old Annalise would have automatically canceled her evening plans to attend. But as I walked toward the elevator, I simply sent a brief reply. "I have a prior commitment this evening. I wish the team a productive meeting." I could feel multiple pairs of eyes on me as the elevator doors closed, marking the completion of a week that had changed everything. The weekend provided welcome distance from the workplace tension, allowing me to consider Lauren's unexpected job offer and plan my next steps. By Monday morning, I had made my decision. I would use the competing offer as leverage. But first, I needed to gather more evidence about the systemic issues at Meridian. I arrived at 8 as usual, greeting colleagues with my normal friendliness despite the awkward glances. Many of them had apparently attended Trevor's mandatory Friday evening meeting and seemed surprised to see me still employed. Jack looked particularly haggard, his usually immaculate appearance now rumpled and stressed. "The Davidson team is threatening to pull their entire portfolio," he muttered as I passed his desk. "Trevor says you're the only one who understands their custom system." "The documentation I created should cover everything," I replied, "but I'm happy to answer specific questions during work hours." By mid-morning, an email from Trevor appeared in my inbox, marked urgent, requesting my presence at a client meeting scheduled for 6 p.m. that evening. I responded promptly. "I'm available for client meetings between 8 and 5. I can attend a morning session tomorrow, if that works better for the client." Trevor appeared at my desk minutes later. "This isn't a request, Annalise. The Davidson executives are flying in specifically for this meeting. Their 8-figure portfolio is at risk. I understand the importance," I said calmly, "which is why I've offered alternative timing that respects everyone's schedule." This is insubordination, Trevor hissed, lowering his voice as Benjamin walked past. Is declining to work unpaid hours considered insubordination in the employee handbook? I asked. I wasn't aware of that policy change. Trevor's face flushed with anger. You know exactly what you're doing. This passive-aggressive routine isn't going to advance your career. Neither did 3 years of exceptional work and unpaid overtime, I replied. I'm simply aligning my efforts with the company's demonstrated values. What's that supposed to mean? It means I've learned that Meridian values perception over performance and politics over results. I'm adjusting accordingly. Several nearby colleagues had stopped pretending not to listen. Trevor noticed the audience and moderated his tone. The team needs you at this meeting, Annalise. We're family here, and sometimes family makes sacrifices. The manipulative appeal to family, a corporate tactic I'd fallen for countless times before, now seemed transparently exploitative. Professional boundaries are healthy in any relationship, I responded. I value this team enough to model sustainable work practices. Trevor stared at me for a long moment before saying, "We'll discuss this later," and walking away. Around lunchtime, Megan stopped by my desk. Trevor's been in closed-door meetings with Benjamin all morning, she whispered. Something big is happening. Thanks for the update, I said. Would you like to join me for lunch? Over sandwiches at a nearby cafe, Megan confided. Your stand has got people talking. Did you know Sarah from accounting was denied promotion 3 times, despite managing the entire tax compliance system? And Danielle from client services quit after training her male replacement who was hired at a higher salary. I suspected it was a pattern, I admitted. How widespread do you think it is? Based on what I've heard this week? It's systematic, Megan replied. But no one's ever pushed back like you are. When we returned to the office, Diane from HR was waiting by my desk. Annalise, do you have a moment to chat? She asked, her expression carefully neutral. In a small conference room, Diane got straight to the point. I've noticed a change in your work pattern over the past week. Is everything okay? Everything's fine, I assured her. I've simply adjusted my hours to match my official job description and compensation. This is about the senior analyst position, Diane stated rather than asked. It's about appropriate recognition and compensation for work performed, I clarified. The promotion decision simply highlighted a larger pattern. Diane nodded thoughtfully. I've reviewed your personnel file. Your performance metrics are consistently excellent, yet your advancement has been slower than comparable colleagues. I took a calculated risk. Diane, are you aware that women in our department typically receive development feedback while men with similar or lesser performance are promoted? Her expression confirmed she'd noticed the pattern too. Do you have specific examples? I do, I said, pulling out the folder I'd prepared over the weekend. This contains 3 years of performance data comparing outcomes by gender in our department. I've anonymized the names except my own, but the pattern is clear. Diane reviewed the documentation, her professional composure slipping momentarily. This is concerning. Have you shared this with anyone else? Not yet, I replied. I wanted to follow proper channels first. As we concluded our meeting, Diane said something unexpected. Benjamin's presence isn't a coincidence, Annalise. There have been concerns at the executive level about certain departments. Back at my desk, I found an email from Lauren with more details about the competing job offer. The position wasn't just a step up. It was 2 levels above my current role with significant leadership responsibilities and compensation that reflected my actual value. As I was considering this development, a commotion near the conference room caught everyone's attention. Trevor was engaged in a heated exchange with Jack, their voices carrying across the otherwise quiet office. You said you could handle it, Trevor was saying. The Davidson account is about to walk because you can't manage their basic reporting needs. I never claimed to understand their proprietary system. Jack responded defensively. That was always Annalise's project. Then you should have said so before accepting the promotion. Benjamin witnessed the entire exchange, making notes as Trevor belittled Jack's capabilities in front of colleagues. At precisely 5 o'clock, I prepared to leave as usual. Trevor intercepted me near the elevator. "The Davidson meeting starts in an hour," he said tensely. "This is your last chance to be a team player, Annalise." With perfect calm, I replied, "I am being a team player by demonstrating sustainable work practices and appropriate professional boundaries. Those are leadership qualities, too." "This is career suicide," Trevor warned. "Interesting perspective," I countered, "because I just received a competing offer for a director-level position at $20,000 more than the senior role you said I wasn't ready for. So whose career should we really be worried about?" The elevator doors opened, and I stepped inside, leaving Trevor speechless as they closed between us. Walking to my car, I felt a profound shift in my professional identity. For years, I had derived my value from overwork and approval seeking. Now, by simply valuing my own time and skills appropriately, I had inadvertently exposed systemic issues that went far beyond my individual situation. My phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. "This is Benjamin Wright. Could we meet for coffee tomorrow before work? There are matters I'd like to discuss privately." The game had changed entirely. Tuesday morning, I arrived at a quiet cafe 2 blocks from the office at 7:15. Benjamin was already there, a folder and tablet on the table before him. "Thank you for meeting me, Annalise," he said, his formal demeanor somewhat relaxed outside the office. "What we discuss here needs to remain confidential for now." "I understand," I replied, curious about this unexpected development. "I'm not just an efficiency expert," Benjamin began. "I'm part of a task force assembled by the CEO to investigate departmental management concerns following several troubling exit interviews and a preliminary review by our general counsel." He opened his tablet and turned it toward me. "This is a pattern analysis of promotion decisions across departments over the past 5 years. Notice anything?" The data visualization showed clear gender and racial disparities in advancement rates, with our department among the worst offenders. "My visit was planned weeks ago," Benjamin continued, "but your situation has provided unexpected real-time evidence of the issues we're investigating." I took a calculated risk. "Is Trevor aware of the real reason for your visit?" "No," Benjamin admitted, "and I'd like to keep it that way until we gather more information." He hesitated before adding, "I understand you've received a competing offer." "Word travels fast," I observed. "Meridian can't afford to lose high performers like you, especially given the circumstances. Would you consider postponing any decision until our investigation concludes?" "What exactly are you investigating?" I asked directly. "Potential systemic discrimination in promotion and compensation practices," Benjamin replied. "And possible financial impropriety in bonus allocations." The second part confirmed my suspicions about Trevor's bonuses. "How long will this take?" "We're moving quickly. In the meantime, I'd like you to document any relevant interactions or evidence." "I've been doing that for the past week," I said, sliding a USB drive across the table. "This contains 3 years of performance metrics, email exchanges, and documentation of work distribution in our department." Benjamin looked impressed. "You've been preparing for this conversation." "I've been preparing to advocate for myself," I corrected. "The fact that it might serve a larger purpose is a welcome development." Back at the office, I maintained my established routine, arriving at 8 and focusing on my assigned responsibilities. The tension was palpable. Trevor alternated between avoiding me and making passive-aggressive comments during team interactions. Jack appeared increasingly overwhelmed, struggling with responsibilities he wasn't prepared for. Around 11, Diane from HR requested another meeting. This time, she was accompanied by Benjamin. "We've reviewed your documentation," Diane began once the door was closed. "It aligns with patterns we've identified in other departments. We'd like to discuss next steps, including addressing your current situation," Benjamin added. "The senior analyst role is clearly misaligned with your qualifications and contributions." "I agree," I said simply. "We'd like to offer you an immediate promotion to senior analyst, with retroactive compensation adjustment," Diane said. "While we continue our broader review, I considered the offer carefully. That addresses my individual situation, but not the systemic issues." Those will take time to resolve, Benjamin acknowledged. But your case could serve as a catalyst for broader change. What about Trevor? I asked. Diane and Benjamin exchanged glances. We're still gathering information, Diane replied carefully. I made my decision. I appreciate the offer, but I believe there's a more productive path forward. I'd like to request a meeting with Trevor, both of you, and anyone else relevant to discuss department restructuring more comprehensively. Their surprise was evident, but Benjamin nodded slowly. That's an unusual request, but I think it could be valuable. When do you propose we meet? Tomorrow morning, I suggested. And I'd like to prepare a presentation on departmental workflow optimization. That afternoon, as word spread about the scheduled meeting, Megan approached my desk. Something big is happening, isn't it? She asked quietly. Things are changing, I acknowledged. Actually, I could use your input on something. Would you be willing to share your perspective on department workflow with me? Anonymously, of course. Anonymously nothing, Megan said firmly. I'm tired of staying quiet. What do you need? By the end of the day, not only Megan but 2 other analysts had provided detailed accounts of their experiences with Trevor's management. The pattern was clear and troubling. Women consistently assigned more work with less recognition. Men fast-tracked, regardless of performance. And Trevor taking credit for team achievements, while blaming failures on subordinates. As 5 o'clock approached, Jack stopped by my desk, his usual confidence completely deflated. Can we talk for a minute? He asked, his voice uncharacteristically humble. Of course, I replied. I'm drowning in this role, he admitted. Half the systems I'm supposed to manage, I barely understand. I don't know why Trevor promoted me over you. Don't you? I asked gently. Jack had the grace to look ashamed. I thought it was because of my client relationship skills. But this week has been a real wake-up call. The Davidson account is threatening to leave because I can't answer basic questions about their platform, the one you built. Their platform isn't documented in the senior analyst training materials? There are no training materials, Jack confessed. Trevor just said you'd handle the technical stuff while I managed client relations. This revelation confirmed what I'd long suspected. Trevor had been structuring the department to keep me doing the complex technical work while giving others the visibility and advancement. Are you going to the meeting tomorrow? Jack asked. Yes, I replied. Are you? Trevor told me to be there. He seems really nervous. Jack hesitated. For what it's worth, I'm sorry about how this all played out. I should have recognized what was happening. As Jack walked away, I received an email that changed everything. It was a meeting invitation for tomorrow morning, but the attendee list had expanded significantly. Now included were the CEO, Amanda Richardson, the Chief Legal Counsel, David Harrison, and several executive vice presidents. The subject line simply read, Department Review and Restructuring. That evening, as I prepared my presentation, Lauren called to follow up on the job offer. After thanking her sincerely for the opportunity, I explained that my situation at Meridian had evolved unexpectedly. I completely understand, Lauren said. But if things don't work out, the offer stands. We've heard about Trevor's management style from several former employees. That comment sparked a new idea. Lauren, would any of those former employees be willing to share their experiences on record? Let me make some calls, she promised. By the time I went to bed, I had received statements from 4 former Meridian employees who had worked under Trevor. Each told a similar story of biased treatment, unrecognized contributions, and eventual departure after being passed over for advancement in favor of less qualified male colleagues. The final piece fell into place at 11 p.m. when I received a confidential email from a former assistant controller who had worked with Trevor. Attached was documentation showing Trevor had been manipulating performance metrics for years, taking credit for work done by female subordinates, while promoting male employees regardless of their actual contributions. Tomorrow's meeting had just become much more significant than a departmental restructuring. Wednesday morning arrived with an atmosphere of nervous anticipation. I dressed with particular care, choosing a polished but confident outfit that struck the right balance of professionalism and authority. The documentation and presentation I had prepared were organized in a sleek portfolio, including copies for all attendees. When I arrived at 8, several colleagues gave me curious looks. News of the high-level meeting had clearly spread, though few understood its true purpose. Megan caught my eye and gave me a subtle thumbs up as I walked toward the large conference room. I was surprised to find I was the first to arrive. Taking a moment to gather my thoughts, I set up my presentation and arranged the materials at each seat. By 8:15, people began filing in. Diane from HR, Benjamin, Jack looking uncomfortable, and several executives I recognized but had rarely interacted with. The CEO, Amanda Richardson, entered last, her presence immediately commanding attention. Trevor arrived just before the meeting was scheduled to begin. His usual confident demeanor noticeably strained. He faltered momentarily when he saw the CEO, clearly not having expected her presence. "Good morning, everyone," Amanda began once all were seated. "Thank you for joining this important discussion about the future direction of the Financial Systems Department. Benjamin and Diane have brought some concerning patterns to my attention, and today we'll be addressing them directly." Trevor shifted uncomfortably as Amanda continued. "I believe Annalise has prepared a presentation on department workflow and performance metrics. Annalise, please proceed." Taking a deep breath, I stood and moved to the front of the room. "Thank you, Ms. Richardson. Over the past 3 years, I've had the opportunity to observe and participate in our department's evolution. Today, I'd like to share some data-driven insights about our current structure, performance patterns, and opportunities for improvement." For the next 20 minutes, I presented a comprehensive analysis of our department's workflows, client outcomes, and promotion patterns. Using anonymized data to protect individual privacy, I demonstrated clear disparities in how work was assigned, credited, and rewarded. As you can see from these metrics, I explained, displaying a particularly telling graph, there's a significant discrepancy between work contribution and advancement opportunity. Team members who consistently exceed performance expectations have been overlooked for promotion, while others with less experience and lower performance scores have been advanced. Trevor interrupted, his voice tight with barely controlled anger. "These charts don't account for intangible leadership qualities that aren't captured in raw performance data." "An excellent point," I acknowledged smoothly, "which is why I've also compiled qualitative feedback from current and former team members about leadership experiences and mentorship opportunities." I distributed a document containing anonymous statements from team members describing their experiences. The contrast was striking. Female employees consistently reported being assigned additional responsibilities without recognition, receiving vague development feedback rather than concrete advancement opportunities, and watching male colleagues with less experience receive promotions they had been denied. "This is completely one-sided," Trevor protested, looking to the executives for support. "Annalise has clearly cherry-picked responses to support her narrative." "Actually," Benjamin interjected, "these accounts align with patterns we've identified across multiple data points, including exit interviews from former employees." At this point, Megan raised her hand. When Amanda nodded for her to speak, she said clearly, "I'd like to go on record with my experiences. What Annalise has presented reflects exactly what I've observed and experienced during my 4 years in this department." 2 other analysts who had provided statements also identified themselves, adding their personal testimonies to the growing body of evidence. Trevor's face had gone from flushed to pale. "This is a coordinated attack on my management style. Annalise has been behaving unprofessionally for days, refusing to handle critical client matters and undermining team cohesion." It was the opening I had anticipated. "I've been working exactly according to my job description and compensated hours," I clarified. "The fact that this created a department crisis demonstrates the structural problems in our workflow." "You've been deliberately sabotaging client relationships," Trevor accused. "I think we need to address that claim directly," I said calmly, turning to Jack. Jack, as the recently promoted senior analyst, Can you share your experience this past week managing the Davidson account? All eyes turned to Jack, who looked profoundly uncomfortable. After a moment of hesitation, he said, I was promoted to a position I wasn't fully qualified for. The Davidson system was built and maintained entirely by Annalise, but that wasn't reflected in our department structure or compensation. When she began working standard hours, it exposed how dependent we've been on her unrecognized contributions. Trevor's attempt to interrupt was silenced by a raised hand from Amanda. Jack continued with unexpected honesty. I was promoted over Annalise despite her superior technical skills and client knowledge because, in Trevor's words, I fit the senior analyst image better. I didn't question it at the time, but I should have. The room fell silent as the implications of Jack's statement sank in. After a moment, I moved to the final section of my presentation. I'd like to address the financial implications of our current structure, I said, displaying a slide showing department bonus allocations over the past 3 years. This data reveals that management bonuses have been directly tied to performance metrics largely achieved by unrecognized work from team members who were subsequently denied advancement. Trevor stood abruptly. This is confidential compensation information. How did you access this? David Harrison, the chief legal counsel, spoke for the first time. Mr. Hammond, I'd be more concerned about the pattern these numbers reveal than how they were obtained. I have documentation from the former assistant controller, I added, sliding copies to Amanda and David, showing that performance metrics were deliberately manipulated to justify bonus distributions while denying promotions. Trevor's face went completely white. That's a serious accusation. It is, Amanda agreed, reviewing the documents. And one that warrants immediate investigation. She turned to Diane. Please escort Mr. Hammond to your office. We'll need to discuss next steps privately. As Trevor was led from the room, Amanda addressed the remaining attendees. I want to thank those who have spoken up today. This kind of systematic review is difficult but essential for maintaining our company values and legal obligations, Benjamin added. We've identified similar patterns in several departments. This investigation is part of a broader company initiative to ensure fair advancement practices. Jack raised his hand tentatively. What happens to the senior analyst position? Amanda looked at me. Annalise, given your qualifications and contributions, would you be interested in the role? I took a deep breath. With respect, Miss Richardson, I believe recent events have demonstrated the need for more substantial restructuring than simply reassigning titles. I've prepared recommendations for departmental reorganization that would create clearer advancement pathways, more transparent performance evaluation, and more equitable work distribution. For the next 30 minutes, we discussed my proposed restructuring plan. By the meeting's end, Amanda had not only endorsed the restructuring, but expanded its scope. Annalise, she said as the meeting concluded, the leadership you've demonstrated through this situation is precisely what Meridian needs at the director level. I'd like to discuss a more significant role for you in implementing these changes across multiple departments. As the executives filed out, Megan caught my eye across the table, her expression a mix of amazement and admiration. Jack approached hesitantly. I know I don't deserve this, he said quietly. But thank you for not throwing me under the bus completely. I really did think I was qualified. The system was designed to make you think that, I replied. We were all playing roles in a flawed structure. Benjamin was the last to leave, pausing at the door. The CEO received an interesting call this morning from someone at Taylor Financial, singing your praises and expressing disappointment that you might not be joining them. You've created quite a bidding war for your talents. After everyone had gone, I remained in the conference room alone, processing the whirlwind of events. My phone buzzed with a message from Diane. Trevor has been placed on administrative leave pending investigation. Can you meet with Amanda at 11 to discuss your new position? 3 years of unrecognized work, countless nights and weekends sacrificed, all coming down to 5 days of simply valuing my time and skills appropriately. The journey wasn't over implementing. Real change would require sustained effort, but the first crucial step had been taken. As I gathered my materials to prepare for my meeting with the CEO, I noticed an email from my sister Amy. Got the summer internship. Can't wait to tell you all about it tonight. For the first time in years, I realized I would be home in time for dinner and fully present to celebrate her success. Some victories extend far beyond the workplace. The following weeks brought dramatic changes to Meridian Financial. Trevor's administrative leave became permanent termination after the investigation confirmed financial impropriety and pattern discrimination. The ripple effects extended throughout the company as similar practices were uncovered in other departments. My meeting with Amanda had resulted in an unexpected offer. Director of Operational Excellence. A newly created position 2 levels above what I had initially sought. The role came with substantial authority to implement the restructuring plan across multiple departments, along with compensation that exceeded even Lauren's competing offer. We need someone who understands our systems from the ground up, but can see the bigger structural issues, Amanda had explained. Your approach to this situation demonstrated exactly the leadership qualities Meridian needs right now. My first official act as director was to implement transparent performance evaluation metrics based on measurable contributions rather than subjective assessments of executive presence. Each role now had clear advancement pathways with specific skill development opportunities. Jack, after honest self-assessment, requested reassignment to a client relationship specialist position that better matched his actual skills. I'm good with people, he acknowledged during our meeting, but I never should have been put in charge of systems I barely understood. Megan was promoted to senior analyst, a role she had been qualified for 2 years earlier. Her first project was redesigning the Davidson platform documentation to ensure institutional knowledge wasn't concentrated with any single employee. Perhaps most significantly, Diane and I collaborated on company-wide policy changes regarding work-life boundaries. Overtime was now properly tracked and compensated. And the practice of publicly celebrating late-night emails was explicitly discouraged in favor of recognizing efficient, high-quality work completed during normal business hours. We're shifting from a culture of visibility to a culture of impact, I explained during a company town hall introducing the changes. Your value to Meridian isn't measured by how many hours you're seen in the office, but by the quality of your contributions. The transformation wasn't without challenges. Some longtime managers resisted the new transparency requirements, and several departed rather than adapt to the changing culture. But as quarterly results began reflecting improved employee retention and productivity, even the most skeptical executives came around. 4 weeks after the confrontation meeting, I received an unexpected email from Lauren at the competing firm. Rather than expressing disappointment at losing me as a potential hire, she proposed a strategic partnership between our companies on a major financial systems integration project. Competitors on some fronts, collaborators on others, she suggested. Both our firms would benefit, and it would break the industry pattern of unnecessary duplication. After consulting with Amanda, I agreed to the partnership, turning a potential career transition into a business opportunity that strengthened both companies. On a personal level, the changes were equally profound. Working reasonable hours meant I could finally maintain a balanced life. I joined a community garden, reconnected with friends I'd neglected, and even started dating again after years of having no time for relationships. Most meaningfully, I was able to attend my sister Amy's college graduation in person, rather than watching via video call, as I'd done for so many family events. Thanks to my substantial salary increase and retroactive compensation adjustment, her student loans were paid in full, a graduation gift that left her tearfully hugging me after the ceremony. "You've always taken care of everyone else," she said. "I'm so proud to see you finally getting the recognition you deserve." 6 months after those 5 transformative days, I stood in the newly renovated office space that physically represented Meridian's cultural shift. Gone were the glass fishbowl offices that had enabled surveillance-style management. The new layout featured collaborative spaces, balanced with quiet work areas, symbolizing our new emphasis on both teamwork and individual contribution. What had begun as a simple act of self-respect, working the hours I was paid for, had catalyzed changes far beyond my individual situation. Multiple women who had previously been passed over received retroactive promotions and compensation adjustments. The gender balance in leadership positions had improved significantly, and quarterly employee satisfaction scores were at historic highs. You know what the most important change has been? Megan asked as we surveyed the transformed space during its unveiling reception. What's that? I replied. People leave at 5 now without apologizing. That simple shift in what we consider normal has changed everything. She was right. By challenging the unspoken expectation that dedication meant sacrifice, we had created space for excellence without exploitation. The company was more profitable than ever, proving that sustainable work practices weren't just ethically right but financially sound. In my new office earned through contribution rather than overwork, I kept a small framed note that simply read 5. It reminded me daily of the moment I'd decided to value myself appropriately, and how that one boundary had created ripples that transformed an entire company culture. The most powerful lesson I learned through this journey was that true professional worth comes not from endless sacrifice but from confident self-advocacy. Sometimes fighting back doesn't require confrontation. Sometimes it's as simple as smiling, working exactly what you're paid for, and going home at 5. Have you ever been in a situation where you felt undervalued at work? What boundaries did you set or wish you had set? I'd love to hear your experiences in the comments. If this story resonated with you, please like and subscribe for more workplace insights, and share with anyone who might need this reminder of their own professional worth. Thank you for joining me on this journey. May you always know your value extends far beyond what any job description can capture.